I was staring blankly at the marriage agreement when my phone suddenly rang. It was about Yu. He'd been in a car accident. Hearing the news, my heart stopped for a full 2 seconds before I scrambled out the door in a panic. Standing at the door to his hospital room, I heard a furious voice from within. Damn you all. I'd rather die than go through with this arranged marriage. Besides, I'm an ascetic, practically a monk. Why would I ever choose to get married? And even if I did, it sure as hell wouldn't be my choice. I don't want to see her. My hand, about to push the door open, froze. I awkwardly pulled it back. Back then, he was a powerful and utterly ascetic man who ran in the same circles as the crown prince of Beijing's elite, and he'd picked up the habit of fiddling with a string of Buddhist prayer beads. When he found out about the arranged marriage with me, he fought it tooth and nail. At the time, my family had fallen on hard times. My father suddenly remembered a joke our grandfathers once made about having their children marry. As it turned out, they both had sons, so they decided the promise would extend to their grandchildren. At first, the Shang family's parents weren't thrilled with the idea. But their son had never shown interest in a woman, instead spending all his time with that ascetic princeling from Beijing. They were afraid they'd have a son but no grandchildren. And so, the marriage meeting between our two families was arranged. Yu toyed with his prayer beads, his gaze cold and utterly dismissive. Even if you drag me here, I won't agree to this marriage. Can't you all see? Her family is just using us. I will not marry such a manipulative woman, so you can just drop it. If I go through with this marriage, then I'm a dog. Just as he finished speaking, I walked into the private dining room behind my parents, wearing a simple white dress. The man who had been ranting fell silent. He scoffed. Impressive tactics. For the rest of the meal, he would occasionally tug at his tie, inadvertently revealing a chiseled jawline. The man who, just moments before, had sworn he wouldn't agree to the marriage, suddenly changed his tune. I'll agree to this marriage. But on one condition, we draw up a marriage agreement. So much for his principles. And that agreement, besides the two of us and the notary, no one else knew what was in it. I went to ask the doctor about Yu's condition. He said it was nothing serious, just that the car accident had affected a cranial nerve. He was experiencing temporary amnesia, but it was hard to say when his memory would return. After Yu fell asleep, his executive assistant came out of the room. He was startled to see me, a hint of sympathy in his eyes. He said that Yu's memory had reverted to the period when he was a complete workaholic. Before we got married, I'd heard that work was Yu's life. Aside from eating and sleeping, he poured all his time into his job. But for some reason, after we were married, he always managed to get home before I did and have dinner ready. On weekends, he even had time to go shopping with me. Seeing that Yu was asleep, and with doctors and nurses at the hospital, there was no reason for me to be there, especially since he didn't want to see me. Yu was in the hospital for less than 2 days before he was discharged. But he didn't come home, nor did he go back to his family's home. Instead, he was staying at the office. With the term of our agreement about to expire, I reached out to him. Our 3-year marriage contract is about to expire. When can we meet to handle the paperwork? It was the first time I had messaged him since he'd been discharged. I was staring at the screen, my index finger tapping nervously against the phone, when he replied. Tomorrow. Shang Corporation. My office. Reading his reply, I felt a sense of emptiness. But this marriage had started as a transaction, and now its time was up. There was nothing to be sentimental about. I pressed my lips together and replied, okay. Shang Corporation. GMO sat casually in Yu's office chair, raising an eyebrow at him. You really don't remember your wife? Yu scoffed. Why would I remember a scheming woman who used our marriage to bail out her family? GMO was the crown prince of the capital's elite circle, and of all Yu's friends, the one I'd seen most since our wedding. He was Yu's closest, most trusted confidant. Don't speak too soon, bro. You might end up eating your words. Yu disdainfully picked up his coffee and took a sip. His brow furrowed, whether because the coffee was too bitter or because something else had crossed his mind. Impossible. My mind is perfectly clear. Out of the corner of his eye, Xiamo saw me at the door. He shot up from the chair, a bit flustered. Sister-in-law. Yu was clearly displeased with the title. What sister-in-law? What nonsense are you spouting? Just as his gaze followed Shimo's to the doorway, his Adam's apple bobbed. His eyes held a hint of panic, and he licked his lips. He stood up ramrod straight, his hands fumbling to straighten his clothes. He fixed his loosened tie, then looked down, decided it was too stiff, and tugged it loose again. In the end, he took the tie off completely, setting it aside, and undid the top 2 buttons of his shirt. Only after confirming that his collarbones and the lines of his chest were visible did the whole routine finally cease. He then smoothed his hair. Striking a pose, he looked at me and let out a ridiculously deep, gravelly voice. "You're my wife?" At the side, Shimo couldn't help but mutter, "What a poser." I didn't answer him. Instead, I walked over and placed the agreement in front of him. "Shangyu, if you have time today, let's go get the paperwork done." Our initial agreement stipulated that he would help the Lin family through our crisis, and in return, I would play the part of his wife for 3 years to help him deal with his family. These past 3 years, we've treated each other with formal respect, except in the bedroom. I could barely handle him there. Overall, we got along well these past 3 years. Shangyu glanced at the agreement, then adjusted his glasses. In a solemn voice, he said, "I don't think it's appropriate to discuss this while I have amnesia. Let's talk about it some other time." I nodded thoughtfully. He had a point. We'd be getting divorced sooner or later anyway, and it would be fairer to him to wait until his memory returned. Thus, our meeting ended for the day on an unresolved note. As I was leaving, I heard Shimo laughing at him from behind me. "Damn, Shang, since when were you such a flirt? And hey, why are your ears and neck so red? Is our great CEO Shang really this pure? I've got to get a picture so I can properly mock you when your memory comes back." Shangyu, flustered and exasperated, snatched the phone from him. "What do you know? It must be this coffee. They must have put something in it. I'm having my assistant switch brands tomorrow." To my surprise, Shangyu moved back home that very night. When I came out of the shower and saw him, I was a little taken aback. Why are you back?" He coughed lightly, his eyes darting uncomfortably to the side. "Cough, this is my home too. There's nothing wrong with me coming back, right?" I nodded, didn't say anything more, and went to blow dry my hair. "I don't think that nightgown you're wearing looks good, don't wear it again." Shangyu said something while I was blow drying my hair, but the sound of the hairdryer drowned out his voice. "What did you say?" I turned off the hairdryer and looked at him in confusion. His ears were red, and he seemed a little flustered. "Nothing, I'm going to take a shower." I smiled, lowering my gaze. Actually, I heard what he said. I looked down at the purple low-cut camisole nightgown I was wearing. It was clearly his favorite nightgown. Every time I wore it, he'd lose control. When I came out of the bathroom and met his gaze just now, I clearly saw the undisguised desire in his eyes. After he finished his shower, he came out in a bathrobe. I was in the living room working on design drawings, pretending he wasn't there. He stood still for a long time, then slowly walked over, casually sitting on the sofa, with his arms spread out on the backrest. Seeing that I was still unmoved, he opened the collar of his bathrobe and adjusted his sitting posture. He reached out his long arm and picked up my water glass from the table. Just as I was about to remind him it was my cup, he had already drunk the water. I hesitated, wanting to speak but holding back. Since he'd already drunk it, I let him be. "Wifey, did you add something to the water? It's so hot." Hearing the unexpected endearment, I looked up at him. What caught my eye was his sexy collarbone, alluring pectoral muscles, and faintly visible abdominal lines. He tilted his head back, his well-defined hands pinching his neck, looking quite provocative. I licked my lips, my body inexplicably feeling a little hot, and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was truly a top-tier succubus, too tempting. It was precisely this look of his that made me lose control and fall into repeated whirlpools of passion. I answered him seriously, "It's hot water." At that time, what I was thinking more about wasn't that it was my cup, but rather how much I admired his self-control. After a moment of frustration, he opened his collar even wider. I could vaguely see his abdominal hair. It's said that men with more abdominal hair have strong desires, and I can only say it's true. I don't know where the talk of his abstinence came from. Just as I was thinking, the man started acting up again. "Wifey, I think I have a fever, touch me." Seeing his flushed face, I actually thought he had a fever. After all, he had a car accident recently and hit his head, could there be any sequelae? So I put down my work and walked over to feel his forehead. His head subconsciously rubbed against my hand, like a puppy. It's a little warm, but not too bad. Why don't you take some cold medicine first and see? He nodded obediently. I was a little surprised. I'd never seen such a well-behaved puppy side of Shangyu, and it had a unique charm. It made me want to stroke his chin. After I made Shangyu a cup of cold medicine, I placed it on the table in front of him and threw myself back into my work. But he just wouldn't leave me alone. Honey, look at my stomach. What are these things? They're in patches, a full 8 of them. Am I having an allergic reaction? I ignored him. I seriously wondered if he'd actually damaged his brain and unlocked a second personality. To think such childish words could actually come from the mouth of this aloof tycoon. Seeing that I was unmoved, he doubled down. Honey, I don't think I'm okay. There's some swelling, down there. It couldn't really be an allergic reaction, could it? I took some allergy medicine from the first aid kit and tossed it at him. That finally shut him up. He lay down on the sofa sheepishly and fell asleep watching me. The next day, I left for work before he woke up, so we didn't see each other. But I saw him when I got off work. He was leaning against his car, lighting a cigarette, looking just like an overbearing CEO making an entrance in a TV drama. He attracted quite a few fangirls who gave him a second glance as they passed by. Some even took out their phones to take pictures. I walked over in my high heels, stopping when the tips of my shoes were just short of his leather ones. Both pairs were black leather with red soles. Together in the same space, they created a subtle, flirtatious tension. Waiting for me? Seeing me approach, he immediately stubbed out his cigarette. He averted his gaze, looking a little guilty. No, I was just passing by. Felt a little stuffy, so I got out for a smoke. The Shang Corporation and my company are in completely opposite directions, and there's no business for him to discuss over here. There was no way he was just passing by. Recalling how he'd been craning his neck to look toward my company's entrance, I couldn't help but press my lips together to hide a smile. Well, what a coincidence. Just happening to pass by my company, and then just happening to stop for some fresh air right at the entrance. Quite the coincidence. The tips of Shang Yu's ears turned pink. He stood up straight and cleared his throat. Ahem. Well, since it's such a coincidence and you just got off work, why don't we head home together? I smiled. Sure. Then, with a practiced ease, I slipped into the passenger seat. But he didn't drive toward home. Instead, he headed for a rooftop restaurant at Victoria Harbor. I looked at him, confused. He wouldn't meet my eyes, flipping idly through the menu. We'll eat first, then go home. Saves us the trouble of cooking. I gave him a knowing nod. Gazing at the city lights over a candlelight dinner. It felt more like a date? How strange. In the 3 years we've been married, we've never had a formal date like this, aside from our rendezvous in bed. For a second, I felt a flash of pure love. Looking closely, I noticed Shang Yu's tie was the exact same color as my dress. Was it a coincidence? If it wasn't, does that mean he was already awake when I left this morning? Was it deliberate? Just as my mind was wandering, a plate of steak, already cut for me, was placed in front of my seat. I was stunned for a moment. It was as if I'd gone back to the days before he lost his memory. He was always such a gentleman, taking care of the little details like this. I guess some things are just ingrained in you. No wonder I found myself catching feelings I shouldn't have. I looked up at him, a smile playing on my lips. Thank you. Shang Yu's reply was polite, almost detached. Of course. After we finished eating, I noticed a smudge of salad dressing at the corner of his lips. I reached out and wiped it away with my fingertip. He looked taken aback. His Adam's apple bobbed, and a blush slowly crept across his cheeks. Seeing the white smudge on my finger, he took a napkin and gently wiped it clean for me. It wasn't until we stepped into the elevator that he seemed to snap out of it. You really don't have to do things like that. I turned to him, confused. I didn't understand what he meant. Seeing as ours is a marriage of convenience, that gesture was too intimate. I believe we should keep a professional distance. I scoffed inwardly. What a phony. He couldn't even stop the corners of his lips from turning up, yet here he was, protesting while his body betrayed him. I tilted my head and played along. You're right. My apologies. By all rights, we're practically divorced already. Rest assured, it won't happen again. The elevator reached the ground floor, and I stepped out a beat before he did. I caught his reflection in the polished wall as he lightly slapped his own cheek, and I couldn't suppress a grin. He's so fun to tease. Back home, I started gathering my things and setting up the guest room for myself. Shanyu paced restlessly in the doorway. Every time he looked like he was about to come in, he'd stop short, turn around, and resume his pacing. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore and came in, stopping me as I was putting a cover on the duvet. Why are you sleeping in a separate room? Didn't we always share a room before? When I looked at him, his normally proud and cold face looked utterly wronged, like a kicked puppy. I snatched the duvet cover back. Because you have amnesia. It wouldn't be appropriate for us to share a room. Besides, we're getting a divorce soon. Shanyu pressed his lips together and lowered his gaze, unable to refute my words. In the end, he left in a huff. At the bar, it was a rare occasion for Shiamo to be drinking with Shanyu. Shanyu always used to say his wife hated the smell of alcohol, so after he got married, Shiamo had the good sense to stop asking him out for drinks. This time, though, Shanyu was at his wit's end and had called his buddy to help him analyze the situation. Tell me, why would I have drawn up a marriage contract like this back when we got married? I looked at the terms, there's nothing in it for me. Shanyu furrowed his brow, rubbing his chin in thought. Unless I was already in love with her back then. I mean, if I could fall for her at first sight after losing my memory, it must have been the same way the first time. This just pissed Shiamo off. Back in the day, Shanyu had been completely whipped, dumping a mountain of work on Shimo before quitting time so he could either pick up his wife from work or go grocery shopping to cook for her. It was thanks to him that Shimo's reputation as the most zen guy in their circle was set in stone. It wasn't that he didn't want to date, when did he even have the time? Shanyu continued his analysis. Since we've been married for 3 years and we've been intimate, that proves we have feelings for each other, or at least we're not repulsed by one another. Logically, the contract should be void by now. So why does she still want a divorce? Is it because of that childhood sweetheart of hers? Shiamo raised a skeptical eyebrow. Didn't you lose your memory? How do you know you've been intimate? Couldn't you have been celibate for 3 years? After all, before he got married, Shanyu had always been the ascetic type, a rare breed in their circle, just like Shiamo. Shanyu took a smug sip of his drink, a hint of a brag in the gesture. There's a full case of ultra-thins at home. I checked the count, more than half are gone. Plus there's an open box that's not finished. There are only 2 of us in the house. If I wasn't using them, what, were they for the dog? Seeing Shimo's unflappable expression, Shanyu couldn't resist teasing him. Ah, forget it. A guy without a wife wouldn't get it. You'll understand when you have one. Shiamo. The confirmed bachelor felt the sting of a cheap shot. Even the unflappable man was rattled. Don't think you can be so tactless just because your memories reverted to when you were younger. I, for your information, have standards. Shiamo pointed an accusing finger at him, flustered and annoyed. The next second, his eyes shifted, and he decided to get under Shanyu's skin. Oh, shoot. With your amnesia, I forgot to mention, your wife hates the smell of alcohol. Guess you won't be getting into bed with her tonight. What a tragedy. You have a wife and you can't even hold her while you sleep. And hey, I remember her childhood sweetheart tried to crash your wedding. You've been married for 3 years and she still wants a divorce. Maybe you're just not that important to her. Can't hold your wife, childhood sweetheart, not that important. Each phrase was a dagger to Shanyu's heart. The more Shanyu listened, the more irritated he got, until he finally ditched his friend. I don't care. As long as I fight for her, she's my wife. I'm not hanging around a single guy like you. You're bad for my luck. Remember to pay the tab. I'm out. With that, Shanyu left without a backward glance. Shiamo was left cursing him under his breath. On the day Shanyu and I got married, Shin Yuan did indeed show up to crash the wedding. He said I'd clearly promised to marry him when we were kids, and asked why I was now choosing someone I didn't love. I pulled my arm from his grasp, my gaze cold. childhood promises don't count. Besides, you said it yourself, I'm just a sister to you. Because our families were close, Xin Yuan and I grew up together. He had a gentle personality and handsome looks, so it was inevitable that I'd develop a crush on him when I was first coming of age. In the high summer of my 17th year, I confessed my feelings to him. He said he'd accept my confession if I got into the same university as him. My grades weren't outstanding at the time, so catching up to him would be difficult, and I'd always been the type to lose interest quickly. But unexpectedly, I stuck with it, pulling countless all-nighters. The day my college entrance exam scores came out, I happily went to find him with my high marks in hand. Only to overhear him joking with a friend, how could I ever get with her? I'm into the curvy, sexy type. Lin, she is just like a little sister to me, don't talk nonsense. After hearing him, one of his buddies teased him. I'm into her type, though. Since you're not, you gonna let your boy have a shot? Xin Yuan paused for a moment, then a cocky grin spread across his face. Knock yourself out. I looked down at my oversized t-shirt and cargo pants, clearly not his type. But wearing baggy clothes didn't mean I had no figure. And it certainly didn't mean our friendship gave him the right to casually sign off on someone else's degrading remarks about me. But from that moment on, the spell was broken. I was completely disillusioned with this older brother who always pretended to be so modest and polite. I had been seeing him through rose-colored glasses, blind to his true character. After I went home, I chose a university and a major that were a better fit for me. I stopped following in someone else's footsteps and started living for my own goals. Shang Yu's eyes narrowed, a clear sign of a threat perceived. A chill emanated from him. He raised a hand, flicked 2 fingers, and summoned a group of bodyguards. He said icily, throw this long, skinny hot dog out. He said it in Cantonese, which gave it the deadpan feel of a joke delivered with a straight face, a little bit humorous. I'd expected this little interruption to displease Shang Yu, but during the ceremony, I couldn't detect any bad mood from him. On the contrary, a faint smile was always playing on his lips. I didn't know if it was out of politeness or for some other reason. On our wedding night, Shang Yu was a little drunk. We lay in the same bed, and even with a foot of space between us, the air crackled with a palpable tension. We were both young, at that ravenous age. An unspoken restlessness stirred between us. Our agreement didn't specify whether we could consummate the marriage, but it did forbid either of us from being unfaithful. 3 years isn't a long time, but it's not short either. I wasn't even sure if I could restrain myself, let alone whether Shang Yu could control his urges. After all, Shang Yu was more stunning than any top model from an exclusive club. Just as my thoughts were in a haze, a low, husky voice came from behind me. Are you asleep? My heart leaped, and I instinctively clutched the corner of the comforter. No. I felt him turn to face my back. Can I hold you? When I didn't refuse, he gingerly placed his hand on my waist. At first, his touch was feather-light, but then he drew me closer until his arms were wrapped tightly around my waist. His chin rested in the hollow of my shoulder, and I could feel the faint scrape of his stubble against my skin. Something hard was pressing into my back. But I didn't call him on it. Instead, I played dumb and turned to meet his deep, dark eyes. Shang Yu, do you sleep with your belt on? Something's poking me. Shang Yu's breathing grew ragged, his eyes fixed on my lips. Little did I know, he was cursing himself inwardly. What the hell was I thinking, putting on that act when we first met? How could a woman this beautiful and kind be playing games? Still, I'm glad I married her. Shang Yu looked at me, his expression dead serious. That's not my belt. We were so close our breaths mingled, and for a few seconds, everything stopped. Then, with an unspoken understanding, as Shang Yu leaned in to kiss me, I met him halfway. He seemed nervous, a fine sheen of sweat had appeared on his forehead. He even murmured, relax. Later, we fell into a frenzy, all tenderness forgotten, replaced by something fierce and punishing. That night, his face was a cold mask as he moved, relentlessly questioning me about my relationship with Xin Yuan. I squeezed a single tear from the corner of my eye and clenched the sheets behind me. He's no one. Just an acquaintance. Hearing the answer he wanted, the coldness left his face. He crashed his lips against mine and threw himself back into the fray. And just like that, brought together by pure lust, we began our life as a husband and wife who made hate. In a strange way, we were a perfect match. By the time Shangyu got home from the bar, I was already asleep. He headed straight for the bathroom to wash off the smell of alcohol, scrubbing his skin raw and brushing his teeth until his gums bled. Then he carefully tiptoed into the guest room and, just as carefully, climbed into bed. Half asleep, I felt someone beside me and, just like I always did, subconsciously snuggled into his arms. Shangyu's body went stiff, he didn't dare move. He lay awake all night, holding me perfectly still, my captivating scent filling his senses. Before my alarm went off, he slipped out of the room like a thief. With my eyes still closed, a faint smile played on my lips. For the next few days, Shangyu would happen to pass by my office building. Then we'd head home together, since it was on his way. That Friday, he drove me to the mountains to escape the heat and have some fine soup. That evening, we were swimming in a private pool. Suddenly, my leg cramped up. He frantically swam over and carried me to the edge, massaging my ankle. "Are you okay?" he asked, looking up at me. His hair was wet, and droplets of water traced a path from the strands down to his collarbone, his chest, and his abs. The sight of him, soaking wet, was intoxicating. I've always loved the way he looks with wet hair, which is why I'm so keen on blow-drying it for him on the lowest setting. I get to admire this delightful sight every day. He anxiously asked me one thing after another. Watching his lips move, I had no idea what he was saying. All I knew was that I wanted to kiss him. I moved a little closer, my lips unintentionally brushing against his cheek. As we both froze and stared at each other, I couldn't help but sigh, "Damn, you are gorgeous." Hearing such a direct compliment, Shangyu actually grew shy. Plenty of people had praised him before, but hearing it from his wife was like an aphrodisiac. "Huh?" Shangyu wanted to hear it again, pretending he hadn't. I repeated myself, my eyes full of adoration. The man was clearly pleased. He suddenly kissed me, stealing my breath with an aggressive passion. Finally, he carried me into the room and gently laid me on the bed. "Baby, you're the one who's truly gorgeous. Linshi, you're unrivaled." Two people, both suckers for a pretty face, admiring each other's good looks. No wonder we ended up married. After he spoke, we looked at each other and smiled, and then the man leaned over me again. Suddenly, a ringing phone shattered the long-overdue moment of bliss. But Shangyu had no intention of answering, continuing to deepen the kiss. I pressed against his chest, my breath a little ragged. "Answer it. What if it's something important?" It was a friend Shangyu hadn't contacted in a long time. I heard you got divorced? And lost your memory? Congrats on your freedom. Come out for a drink, man, there are a ton of new, hot girls here." In their circle, there were inevitably some playboys, and Shangyu's relationships with them were mostly superficial. Shangyu first glanced at my expression. I just shrugged, showing that I didn't care. We were getting divorced anyway. Hearing that, the man instantly exploded, cursing into the phone. "What the fuck are you talking about? Divorced my ass. Who the hell is spreading that rumor? I'll sue them. I'm over here trying to win my wife back, and you're telling me to go hook up with some girls? Are you trying to get me killed? And you son of a bitch. Don't you ever contact me again." After hanging up the phone, Shangyu explained. "I've never hired an escort." He spoke, then his brow furrowed in thought. With his memory gone, it was too absolute a statement. He might know the man he was before his memory loss, but he couldn't be sure of the man he became after we married. They say men change for the worse after marriage, especially in a world like his. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my warm breath tickling his ear. "Shangyu, I believe you." He pressed his lips together, his eyes filled with self-reproach. "I'm sorry. I don't have any memory of our marriage. It's not fair to you." I shook my head. "But you still have muscle memory, don't you? Want to continue?" He nodded earnestly. And then we were lost in each other once again. Ours was an arranged marriage, a business deal, and he was distant after we wed. I was never sure if he loved me, but I saw everything he did for me over these past 3 years. The Lin family was on the verge of bankruptcy, and the Shang Corporation brought it back from the dead. But I had no interest in finance or business and didn't want to be trapped in the family company. It was one of the reasons I agreed to the marriage. They would give me my freedom, and I wouldn't be tied to the family enterprise. My passion was design, and I wanted to open my own firm. But without my family's backing, it's hard to get a foothold in a city as dazzling as this one. When I was first starting out, I hit one roadblock after another. I'd often fall asleep at night over my design sketches. Shangyu saw my business plan and sat down with me to seriously discuss my company's future. I can invest, be your partner. Just remember to give me my share of the profits. Why would a titan of the city like him care about such a small cut? I refused at first, but then he presented me with a detailed market analysis. It was only then that I realized how naive I'd been. Shangyu introduced me to brand managers and potential partners. He taught me the proper etiquette for business functions, showing me that these networking events weren't just about the empty pleasantries I was used to, that you could actually earn respect. And just like that, my design firm began to thrive. More and more industry leaders started to partner with us. Once he saw I could stand on my own 2 feet, Shangyu stepped back from the company. In his world, it's taboo for a wife to be in the public eye, and plenty of people whispered behind my back. But Shangyu always silenced them, supporting my career. He was more than a husband to me, he was my benefactor, my confidant. Even if our marriage was only held together by a contract, it's a part of my life I don't think I'll ever forget. I don't know if it was because Shangyu felt younger mentally, but his passion was more ferocious, a far cry from his usual mature, composed self. As I finally begged him to stop, he seized my wrist. He spotted the 2 letters tattooed on the inside of my wrist, SY. He gritted his teeth, a mix of anger and jealousy in his eyes, as he moved against me with more force. He growled in my ear, SY, is that for Xinyuan? I'd gotten it on a whim during a trip with friends. I thought of Shangyu as someone special, and even if we were to part ways, I wanted a permanent reminder of him. It never even crossed my mind at the time that the initials were the same as Xinyuan's. If he hadn't brought it up, I would have completely forgotten about the guy. In a shattered voice, I answered him, no, it's for Shangyu. It's for you. I thought my answer would calm him down, but it only seemed to rile him up more. I was completely at his mercy. Finally, my vision went black, and I passed out. When I woke up, it was already late in the morning. Shangyu was on the balcony in a bathrobe, a cigarette between his fingers. I couldn't tell what he was thinking, but his brow was furrowed, and his face was clouded with a somber expression. A text alert chimed on my phone. I tapped it open. It was a reminder that the deadline for our agreement was approaching. If we didn't file the paperwork soon, it would be null and void. My feelings were a mess. If he gets his memory back, will he blame me for sleeping with him while he had amnesia? You're awake? The man came in from the balcony. His voice was raw, as if he'd been up all night smoking. A glance at the ashtray confirmed it, it was overflowing with cigarette butts. My guess was right, but why would he do that? He walked over to me and kissed my forehead. Get up and freshen up. It was an intimate gesture, but it felt familiar, like how things used to be. Even during our most intimate moments, he was always polite, almost reserved, always asking for permission before he'd hold or kiss me. Not like the impulsive, reckless Shangyu from yesterday. That Shangyu would have just pulled me into his arms and possessively forced me back to sleep with him. I studied him. He asked gently, what's wrong? My eyes narrowed with suspicion. You got your memory back, didn't you? He hadn't expected to be exposed so quickly. After thinking all night, he had decided to keep pretending he had amnesia. He figured he'd play along day by day, and once the deadline passed, he could come up with any number of excuses to avoid the divorce. But he hadn't counted on how well I knew him. After 3 years of sharing a bed, I knew his every subtle mannerism. Yes, he admitted. But I don't want a divorce. I hadn't expected him to be so direct. I thought he would use some clever tactic to stop me. I never thought he'd just come right out and say it. In truth, Shangyu was at the end of his rope. If he kept up his cold, reserved act, he was going to lose his wife for good. He took my hand, his expression earnest. My original plan was this, I didn't want to be a burden to you. I gave us 3 years. If you fell in love with me, we would spend the rest of our lives together. If not, I would let you go. I knew you were constrained by your family, so I did everything I could to help you up, hoping that even if you eventually chose to leave me, you'd be able to stand on your own and do what you love. I admit, I was putting on an act. But now I just know that whether you love me or not, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. What started as a simple physical attraction grew into a deep admiration for his character. It was hard not to fall for a partner who guides you like that. He was so smart. He knew it was better to teach a person to fish than to give them a fish, and he truly taught me so much. All right. No divorce. As I was changing, Shangyu was on the phone with Xiamo. Hello? How'd you know my wife isn't divorcing me? Forget it. You don't have a wife, so you wouldn't get it. Xiamo, I don't particularly want to. Shangyu ignored him and continued, can you handle the agreement for me? Just void it. I know it's about to expire anyway, but the sooner it's dealt with, the better I'll feel. From Xiamo, who was stuck working on a weekend, came a resentful reply. It's your own damn business, handle it yourself. Shangyu was still gloating. I don't have time. I'm taking my wife on a date. Besides, you're single with nothing to do, so just take care of it for me, won't you? Xiamo slammed the table in fury. I'm working my ass off with overtime, and you have the nerve to say I have nothing to do? I quit your company. Then he furiously hung up. Shangyu couldn't help but mutter, what a temper. No self-control at all. No wonder he's single. I was speechless. We didn't stay on the mountain for a second day. Shangyu said that was where I'd gone on a date with his amnesiac self, and he was jealous. So he took me out on a private yacht to see the city lights at night. The sea breeze on our skin, the beautiful scenery before us, a drink in hand. It was a completely different feeling. Just as we were getting tipsy, he suddenly grabbed the back of my head and kissed me without warning. It was our most intense kiss yet, passionate to the point of being ravenous. He finished by biting down hard on my lower lip. I cried out in pain and shoved him away. What was that for? Shangyu just hoisted me over his shoulder and carried me into the cabin. Shibao, you brought up divorce 3 times while I had amnesia. Time for your punishment. I pressed my hands against his chest, retorting, well, the first time we met, you said whoever went through with this marriage was a dog. Shangyu was silent for 2 seconds before his hands resumed their work. Woof woof. I'm Shibao's dog. Yours to play with for a lifetime. All night long, he was proving that he loved me far, far more than his amnesiac self ever did.